Hey everyone. So today I come up with another interesting topic about the Dataproc. Is one of the service which is available in GCP, which is especially for running a Spark job on cloud. So in this particular video, I'm not going to talk about how exactly the backend is working. Instead, we're gonna create the cluster. At least in the high level, we'll see how we can create a cluster and how we can run a job which is sitting on our local laptop. If you want to execute the job in cloud, what are the ways we can do that, right? So obviously we can do all this stuff in the UI itself, but we are a data engineer, right? So we always do something more interesting in terms of having the command shell prompt on creating the script in the backend and your local laptop and execute that. So I have prepared some kind of backend script which is available. So I'm gonna execute one by one and see how exactly the Spark cluster is going to create on GCP, and I have one small PySpark code, which is none other than here it is. You can see my screen. I just written a small PySpark code, which is basically get the data frame, and then following with the group by what is the sum of age. So that is the typical small example. We'll see this Spark script.py file, which is sitting on my local laptop. If I run this in my machine, it won't work, right? Because I need a Spark framework. Yes, I can do that. I can download Spark framework in my this is Windows, so I can download and install it. But that is not a use case for this video. We want to run this PySpark code directly in Spark cluster, right? So that is the thing we are going to see in this video. So before go in the command shell, so we have to make sure a couple of things before we started executing the the command. One is we have to enable the Dataproc API, which is absolutely we have to go to here and then enable the Dataproc API or Dataproc service in the Google Cloud. So right now I don't have any cluster. I created already, but I deleted. So right now we don't have any cluster at the moment. And another important thing is we have to download and install this gcloud CLI SDK. So this will make sure it will interact with your local command terminal with the GCP in cloud. So it is a CLI command line interface software, so which will help us to interact with our GCP resources. So once you download this gcloud and you have to install it, after that you have to just make sure to run this gcloud login. So what this will do is basically it will redirect to the web page, and then you have to log in with your what are the console we are using here. That console has to go back, and you have to provide the access to the CLI to use your resource, right? So that is something prerequisite to make sure for this video especially. Okay. So we can so basically, so the first step is we want to create a cluster, right? So I have this Python PySpark script. It's basically a .py script, but I want to execute this Python script in GCP Dataproc, which is nothing other than Spark cluster. But we can choose any terminal. You can use the command prompt terminal, or you can use PowerShell terminal, or you can, in my use case, I downloaded Visual Studio, so it's like a PowerShell, right? So I'm going to execute all the command from here. So let's start one by one, and eventually I will explain the each command what exactly is doing the same. So let's take this script dot ts something. So I don't want ts because it's a TypeScript, right? So just put a txt. So the first command I gonna execute this one. So the gcloud, that is a CLI which we downloaded and installed it, and the service which we are going to create is Dataproc, and we are going to create the cluster, and then the create command, and then the cluster name. In this case, I just keep it as Apache Spark cluster, and the project is nothing but the project ID of here. You can get it from here, and the region. So I'm in California, so I'm just using US best one, or what other region you think it is comfortable for you. You can pick the region, and then zone. It's like a time zone of your cluster, and then you can typically create a cluster with multiple nodes, but here this is running on my own buildings. I don't want to take a risk with the multiple nodes, so I'm just testing purpose, right? So I just created with a single node, and then machine type. So this is something which is kind of mandatory to select this kind of information to create a cluster. This is the same thing you can see in UI also. If I create cluster, this will ask what is the compute engine. In either way, you can use Kubernetes engine. And if I select this create, I have to select the cluster name and standard. So this is typically the user interface level, but we are executing the same thing in backend. So let me copy this, and this is I'm going to execute with one single master machine. So we need this N1 standard 4. This is something Google is providing the machine type. So this is something you can get from the documentation. So I'm going to execute this and see whether it is going to execute successfully or not. Okay, I don't want to see the last thing because you need to execute it. So it's doing something, and yeah, we can ignore the warnings, and it is starting creating the cluster, I guess. Let me refresh my page and see whether it is doing anything or no. Yes, right. It's creating the cluster, the same name which we are given in here, Apache Spark cluster, and then it is still provisioning the worker and master. In our case, we are single node cluster, right? So it is started provisioning those details. It takes quite some time in order to provisioning the required access to move forward. So yeah, this is something very unique, the way of you can execute, way of creating the cluster. Obviously you can use Terraform. You can copy the script in a Terraform and then execute by multiple times if you want. Is another way of provisioning your clusters in a bulk level. But this is typically if you want to play around with what exactly how exactly you want to run something quickly in GCP Cloud on Spark. We can leverage the gcloud CLI command prompt. Yeah. So let's wait for some time. I think this will take quite some time. All right. So it's created. Just to make sure. Yes. So as you see here, the status is running. So the Spark cluster is created in GCP in the Dataproc cluster. So yeah, so first job is done. The second is we need to execute the things, right? But we haven't reached that part yet. But before that, we want to make sure a couple of things, whether it is what is the provisioning, what is the hardware of the Dataproc the cluster which we have given, right? So we can execute this describe command with the same kind of the project and region we have to provide to make sure to get the what exactly that machine is. So you paste it here, enter, and you can see this has written the bunch of information with what is the details about. Should have the disk size 1000 GB and the RAM size, everything, how much memory for the MapReduce and everything Spark has assigned. So typically it will provide all the configuration detail of the cluster machine which we deployed just before, right? So the another thing is now we're gonna execute this the code, right? So how we can execute? So basically this is the command. So gcloud Dataproc jobs submit, because we are going to use Spark for this execution, so we had to provide the Spark and then the Spark script, which is the file of the path, right? Our file in our case it is sitting on the file is sitting on same path, so you have to provide the that .py file, and then the same cluster, or what is the cluster we are going to execute, because in some situation we may create a multiple clusters, so you have to make sure which cluster you are going to execute your code. So in our case we have only one cluster. So yeah, so this is, other than that, everything is straightforward, like region, project, everything. So I'm going to execute this now. Let me clear this thing and paste it now and see whether it is doing, whether it's going to execute. Okay, the good thing is it's created a job. This is the job ID, and if we go here, we should see this job. Yes. Okay, so this is something because I created the cluster name with the old one, that probably bring that existing job from here. But this is the one 967 which we created. It is running, and we noticed here we got the result. So this is a cool part, right? Because we created a PySpark script which is sitting on my local laptop, and I'm executing that PySpark which is on GCP Cloud, and I'm returning the data in my local, right? So that is pretty much all the developers in the world, they were trying to execute the same kind of process. So as we know the logic, and as we know the process how to execute this, then it's a matter of time we need to extend our logic in our code and play around with that, right? So so this is what I want to talk about in this video. The other thing is the user interface, right? I want to see the Spark job in the browser. So generally we have Spark master URL, everything. So how we can check that Spark master URL in GCP? It is quite interesting. If we go to cluster, click on here, we should see right here we am getting the output. That's cool. We have the terminal. I guess because I created previously, it's not showing. So the couple of steps which we need to make sure before we see that job in the Spark user interface or in the UI. So this is something which I once you created the job, once you created the cluster, you have to manually enable a couple of things in your laptop to in your computer to set up the tunnel between your local system and GCP in order to see the user interface of the Spark job. So one of the thing is, this is the SSH tunnel which we need to create. So yeah, so if you see this is my compute command of the SSH command for my cluster. So take a Spark cluster, and this is my cluster name. In this case, hopefully you can see that. Cluster detail, yeah, so it's a name, some same name, web interface, yes, here. Okay, so if I want to view the Spark job in web interface, so I have to follow this process, right? So one thing is I have to create the SSH tunnel. So I already have that in my PowerShell, I guess. If not, let me see here. Yeah. So I have this. I just copy that the interface command from the GCP here. It's because as soon as you create the cluster, you could able to get this detail from your cluster. So just gcloud compute SSH the cluster name, and this is the is a machine name, and the project ID and zone. And as you see here, they created the tunnel between our local laptop and or your local system with your GCP on the port of 1080. So if I enter, so it will open. This will bring this connection between from your local laptop to the GCP. In another window, we have to execute this command to connect your tunnel with the proxy to the browser to connect. So I'm sitting on the Chrome application, so I just need to provide like this. So Chrome of the same command which I'm getting from the proxy server. So this is the interface we are going to see it, because that is where the Spark cluster is running. So if I enter, what happened? Nothing. So it's not showing anything, because you have to make sure to add a couple of settings in order to see the Spark UI. So you have to go settings and search for proxy settings. Here, open your computer proxy setting, and here, in my case, I have to set up the default server. I have to enable this basically of localhost of 1000 or 1080. So once you have this, or if you close this browser and let me open it again, and if I copy this, or if I run this same command again, so I haven't executed, I think, so let me enable, save, so I think I need to reopen the browser. Key cluster, still not working. Okay, let me run this again. Okay. All right, actually it took some time to refresh it back. So what I did is so in my proxy setting, I as a first step, you have to enable this local host 1080 port. We have to manually add the proxy server, and it's just the first time. And then if it is working fine, then probably you can just switch off it back, and then as soon as you make sure your terminal is working fine, you could be able to see this cluster here. So as you see the finished job, we have the finished job here, and if I click here and I see how many, basically we can see the overall the job process so far, right? So yeah, this is something which I want to talk about in this video. And finally, if you want to delete the Spark cluster, you just need to have this command. So Dataproc clusters delete, and yeah, this should do the job what we need. Execute. Yes, waiting for the operation. And if I go to because I enable the proxy, right? So let me go now, because every time when we enable the proxy, it will take the cache from your from the browser. So you have to close the existing browser and open the new one, or you can use the incognito window. That should resolve the issue. So every time you need to close and open it. Okay, so Dataproc let's see, it's deleted, yeah, and let's see, should see any cluster or not. Cool. So as we expected, it's deleted the cluster which we created. So we don't want to go every time to the UI for any Spark cluster creation. And importantly, we can run our PySpark script which is sitting on local. That is something which is a cool part which I want to share with our community. Thank you.